Lots of people have been coming out and saying that they want a big block swap their car now that mine runs. And I have a message for those people. You don't want to do this. This is the stupidest swap you could ever put in a Crown Victoria. Let's go bumper to bumper on bad decisions. First of all, you got to find a radiator that does not have a radiator cap, because the thermostat housing sits above the radiator. So that's your first challenge. Then, your inlets and outlets are opposite on the 460 that they would be on the stock Crown Vic. So this guy would be up here, and this guy would be down here. That's your second challenge. Your third challenge is getting and making radiator hoses that fit. Once you've done that, you need to locate and make an inline radiator thermostat or inline radiator filler neck work, because again, the thermostat sits above the radiator. Then you need to figure out your ignition system, and either you're going to go with an MSD or something, which is extremely expensive. You're going to go with a Ford DuraSpark, which you're going to end up with a coil on the intake, which I don't like the look of, but if that's what you're for, it's no different than what I'm running. Or you get this guy, which is super cheap off of eBay. But the problem is, if you put this on here, now your thermostat housing doesn't fit. So now you got to go down to Davis Unified and figure out a thermostat housing. And then once you buy it, you still got to take a grinder to it. So you have that. Then over here, there's missing climate control, all of it. And it's missing because it sat against this valve cover. And if you put it in, it would all go in together, but you're never getting that valve cover back off. So that didn't work for me. So that's why it doesn't have any climate controls. Custom overflow bottle. You'll notice that the rest of this is all completely empty. And the reason for that is a 460 weighs 700 pounds. If you left all of the climate control and everything else in the front of this car, the nose is going to be on the ground. Without it being lightened, you're kind of SOL, unless you put F-150 springs in it or something like that. But then you got to go down a whole nother route of messing with the suspension when this is a stock suspension car. Moving back further, you get to the carburetor. What's your plan for the fuel system? Because you have a stock gas tank and a whole mess of fuel lines, two of them together, that come up here into this mess. Are you going to adapt the factory fuel pump to make it run a 460 fuel injection system? Because if so, you might want to go look at the 460 fuel injected intake manifolds, because that's about the ugliest thing on planet Earth. And if you're not going to do that, you're going to have to figure out how to get fuel to your carburetor. I'm not going to drill into the factory fuel tank and try and mess with all that, so I'll just put a fuel cell in it. You notice the battery's back here from the front of the car as well. So you got that going for you. And then regardless if you have an Aero or an 03 to 11, you got to figure out motor mounts. If you want an Aero with a big block, you're making your own like I did. And it took me a while to figure it out. Probably because I'm stupid. But either way, it's not that easy of a task, because you got to worry about the angle of the engine sitting this way, and you got to make sure that it's leveled this way. It takes some work. And if you want to get an 03 to 11, you're into a whole motor mount mess that I don't know anything about. And yes, they make motor mount swaps for that frame to go into a truck, but where does it put your 460? Are you going to be leaned up against that? Are you going to come over here and be directly against the firewall because there's literally no room there? Nothing. There's no room there. You may get those motor mounts and have them shipped in and find out they don't fit, period. And then you got a transmission mount to figure out. And then you got a drive shaft to figure out. And then you have exhaust to figure out. And on top of that, you got to figure out a shifter. You got to figure out a throttle cable. You got to figure out your charging system and how to make it work. Like, let me put it this way. This car makes 300 horsepower. Yeah, it's got a whole shit ton more torque than that, but 300 horsepower. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and 2,000 man hours, and I have 300 horsepower. And I have you people telling me that you want this. Why? I know everybody's against an LS swap because it's changing genders or whatever you want to call it, putting a Chevy in a Ford, but it's a whole lot cheaper than this. Go look up a top end kit for a Ford 460. You know what? I'll save you the trouble. It's $3,500. $3,500 for a set of heads, an intake, and a carb. You know what kind of small block Chevy I can buy and build for $3,500? I can buy a brand new remanufactured motor for like $1,600, and I have another $2,000 to put a cam and heads and intake and carb and everything else on it because I can find that stuff secondhand on Facebook. You're not finding anything for that secondhand on Facebook, and if you do, it ain't gonna be cheap. On top of that, you come in here. What are you gonna do for gauges? Because all three of those are mechanical, and that's mechanical. And how are you gonna control it? Because there's the starter button, and the ignition, and the voltage regulator, and the fans. Hey, I don't have power windows. I don't have a power seat anymore. I had to custom make that slider for that seat so that I could have belts in it. And I gotta make a custom bar to go across to mount the belts too. And you're still stuck with an 8.8 that's stock. I understand that we all grew up with there's no replacement for displacement. Well, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but it's 2020 and there's plenty of fucking replacement for displacement. You don't want a 460 Vic. There's nothing about this that makes any sense. I did this because some group members told me and badgered me and bullied me when I brought up the idea and told me that it couldn't be done. And I felt hazed by the automotive community. So I said, fuck you guys. And I left Facebook for a year and I built this. I am paying for a vendetta. That's what this car is to me. My ex-wife left me. I bought this car for her. And she threw the keys at me on her way out and said, you know what? Now you can do what you want with your car. Now you can turn it into a race car because you ain't got to deal with me. So between that and telling me that I couldn't be done, I put a 460 in a Vic. But there is a damn good reason why everybody will tell you that it cannot be done. And I will be the one to tell you it shouldn't be done. Like, now you got stock brakes for Crown Vic. You got a stock 8.8. Like, this car is still limited. Yeah, the frame's great under it, but the car is really not. Ford Ranger. You could get a Torino and put a 460 in it. A Cougar, maybe. Anything but this. Like, this shouldn't be a thing. Don't do this, guys. Hopefully that clears up some messages for you. I don't want to be the only one with a 460 Vic, but I also want to save people a bunch of money and trouble because this is not a street car. This is a legitimate race car, trailer queen thing. And it costs a lot of money. And a lot of time that I could have been spending with my wife, or my kids, or my fish, or my dogs, or literally anything else. 2,000 hours of my life is gone. Do you really, really want a 460 Vic? I'm going to go inside and warm up and dab, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye!